You're listening to the Huddle Up Podcast with Chad Jensen and Zack Kelberman. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com and sound off. And now it's time to drop some knowledge.
Okay, we are live. We'll let this stream breathe just for a minute. Make sure it's nice and solid across all streaming platforms. Welcome in, everybody, to the Huddle Up Podcast, presented, as always, by Mile High Huddle, powered by Overtime Media. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, as always, my partner in crime. I would say fresh off a day off, but we had a bonus pod yesterday. So, it's been about a day since last I saw you. How you hanging in there, brother?
I'm hanging in, Chad. Like Belichick says, no days off. That's what we have to do. Keep grinding, keep potting, and keep putting out some Broncos content for the masses.
I got a chance. I subbed in last night on with Eric Trickle on Dove Valley Deep Divers. So we talked a little bit about it then, but I don't know if you happened to see Donald Trump's last task force press conference, whatever it was. Earlier in that day, he had a phone call with all the major sports leagues, and he basically told them in that call that he doesn't see any reason why there's not going to be stadiums full of people in August and September. Anyway, and then he was asked directly about it by the media because that leaked out as a story. He was asked about it a few hours later during his press conference. And even though, nobody can make any guarantees right now with what's going on, it was encouraging to hear that, hopefully if this thing continues the way the models and the projections are showing it to be, Zach, we're going to get our football on time. Some things might still be delayed as far as offseason and training camp. We'll see how it shakes out, but that was at least encouraging.
It seems like we got some hope, and that's all we can really ask for at this stage, Chad. Without using these secret code words we want to avoid here and the issue that shall not be named, it seems like we have hope for the season. It's still, months away, 4 months away or so, 5 months away. So there's a chance that the NFL season won't be affected, but no offseason program, no pre-draft process. It's going to be weird until we get to September. Really quick,
because Steve got this super chat in early, and the comment stream is stacking up. I wanted to grab it real quick so we didn't have one of those instances where the comment stream passes by the super chat card. Want to give Steven his love. Appreciate that donation, my friend. You know that means a lot to Zach and I, means everything to us. And you're on the MHH Mount Rushmore. You know that, bro. And we love you. He says, hey, guys, love what you guys do. I really think Elway will trade up for Henry Ruggs. We're going to talk about that today. A mock draft roundup, all the latest mocks from around the web, the most credible mocks. But I think we will get one of the top 3 wide receivers. CBS Sports had a mock that had us trading up with the Niners to pick 13 for Lamb. Do you guys think that will happen? 13 is the Niners, right? Yeah. So again, thank you, Steve. I think that's a very real possibility. And I want to answer Steve on the other side just real quick. I want to do the one small piece of business just to remind everybody so that we can move on and Zach sink our teeth into the actual content of this show, answer Steve's question. Make sure you're following the show on Twitter at HuddleUpPod, simply the best way for you to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening with the show in real time. And while you're at it, make sure you also follow the main account at Mile High Huddle. And if you're listening to this podcast after the fact on Apple Podcasts, take some time, leave a creative review. That's one organic way that you can help support the show. Another simple, no-brainer, easy way for everybody right now watching this live to support the cause. Like this video. Doesn't matter which platform you're watching it on, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're watching, like the video. It's a great organic way to support the cause.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Zach, back to Steve's question of, do you think that will happen? I mean, neither one of us have a crystal ball, but we know that the John Elway and John Lynch, they have a friendly relationship. They've helped each other out in the draft. They've swapped players in the past. I could see this trade happening, and I could see CeeDee Lamb being the pick, although my only exception to this is if the Broncos were to make a trade up, my bet would be that it would be for Henry Ruggs as opposed to CeeDee Lamb.
I agree. And also the fact they're probably going to have to leapfrog the Niners, because if there's one team in the NFL, Chad, that needs a wide receiver more than the Broncos, it is San Francisco. So if they like Lamb, they're not going to move out of that spot and pass up their guy they want. The Broncos would probably have to get in front of them. And then it gets to a point of 10 or 11, maybe even in the top 10, 8 or 9 or so. I'm not willing to move up, probably not even for Henry Ruggs, considering how stacked this draft class is, Chad. The only guy I would jump in the top 10 for is Simmons. As much as I love Ruggs, I don't know that I would give up capital when there's a good chance one of those top 3, 4 receivers will fall into their laps at 15 either way.
Fair point. Jimmy Mack jumping in with a $5 super sticker. I don't even know what a super sticker is, but we do appreciate you jumping in like that with the donation, Jimmy. Thank you very much, my friend. All right, let me just welcome in everybody that's been hanging out in the chat and who have joined us in the chat. Ed, what's up, my friends? Good to see you. Terry, Sterling, Charlie, Brian, Robert, Bronx Legend. Good to see each and every one of you, even if I didn't mention you.
Hit that like button.
That's right. Smash it. And guys, we want to get to a mock draft roundup. What does that even mean? Well, we've gone through and done the research on our side to compile a list of all the top mock drafts over the last week from credible outlets, okay, and people that we know and outlets that we trust, to kind of get a bead on what the outside world thinks the Broncos are going to do in the first round of the draft. And we're going to get to that. Let me just grab one more super chat from Bronx Legend. Appreciate that, my friend. Yes. He says, would you call it a reach to snatch Brandon Ayuk or Jalen Reagor in the first round? Yes, absolutely. Unquestionably so. Ayuk is a fringe second rounder, could end up going in the third. Reagor was a fringe first rounder before he tanked it at the combine. But in all fairness to Reagor, he's one of these guys, Zach, that is really suffering without a pro day, because, you know, his tape, he looks a lot twitchier and faster than what he showed at the combine. And he played at TCU at a significantly lighter weight by 10, 15 pounds, something like that. For whatever reason, his representation told him to bulk up and get nice and thick. It didn't work out for him, Zach. He ended up running, relatively slow for a wide receiver of his size, and it really hurt his draft stock. So in a perfect world, he's a type of player where, all right, I kind of screwed the pooch in the combine, so I'm going to go ahead and lose this weight and zero in and focus on my pro day as my opportunity to show scouts what I can really run. Because he's not going to get that chance, Zach, I don't see him going in the first round for sure.
Now, the only way either of them end up with the Broncos is if Denver goes for a different position in the first round. Those are second-tier prospects. Those are second-round, maybe even third-round prospects. No way in hell do I want the Broncos gambling on either guy in the first round. There's plenty of other top receivers that would come before them. And we talked about Reagor on a previous pod. To me, there's so much bust potential there. I wouldn't even touch him in the second round, I don't think. I would go for Denzel Mims. I would go for there's so many other receivers in this draft class. So Reagor scares me. Ayuk is not worth the top 15 pick. So wait till that. Get a different guy in the first round if you want to explore those second-tier options.
Many of you probably saw the poll that we put up on YouTube earlier today. I kind of kicked myself because I waited too long to put that on. We'd like to get those up a lot more often in the coming weeks and months of this podcast and the live streams, basically involving you, our audience and community on YouTube, in terms of what you want us to talk about, what the topics of the shows might be, programming points, etc. So those of you who are subscribed on YouTube, the 6,000 or so that are listening and watching this either live or after the fact, make sure you check in the community section. You're going to be seeing polls laid out by us. Maybe not on a daily basis, but definitely on a weekly basis. We want to involve you more on what you want to see this show that Zach and I do 4 times a week, plus the other podcasts do for you. Now, Zach, let's get to the roundup real quick. And guys, your questions, your super chats, we will get to those in this podcast. Let us just grab the roundup first really quick, and then we'll start kind of going around and seeing what's on everybody's mind. First off, I want to feature Eric Trickle's mock draft, 7-round mock from earlier this week. Now, it's the last mock that Trickle's going to do until the final week leading up to, or I should say the week of the draft, which is April 23rd. He had the Broncos in his mock moving up to pick 11 to take Henry Ruggs. Now, it's worth mentioning real quick, instead of pedantically going through each one that mentions Henry Ruggs, Trickle has the Broncos at Ruggs. Walter Football has the Broncos taking Ruggs at 15. Former colleague of ours, Josh Edwards of CBS Sports, has the Broncos taking Ruggs at 15. Let me see if there's another one. Let me just make sure. That's it in terms of what I was able to find of the last week. So Henry Ruggs, probably the most common pick in the mock draft landscape, Zach. I don't know how much more we can really add to that as a conversation, but it's one of those situations where I think where there's smoke, there's fire.
Absolutely. And the Broncos have a need, and their need aligns with it being such a historically deep draft class. And you can make the case that his stats were a little inflated in the Alabama offense. You can make the case that he's not the wide receiver one that Judy is or CeeDee Lamb is, but he's still a dynamic, game-breaking wide receiver who would thrive next to Courtland Sutton catching passes from Drew Lock. It just makes too much sense, Chad. But then again, so did Prince Amukamara, and he's not with the Broncos either. So we have to see ultimately if this is a giant smokescreen, which I don't think it is, or if there's more smoke to the fire and they will target a receiver at 15, depending on who's on the board.
SI's Jaime Eisner had the Broncos taking CeeDee Lamb at pick 15, and it's an interesting choice. I believe in that particular mock, Ruggs was already off the table. So CeeDee Lamb was the pick, and honestly, CeeDee Lamb's my favorite receiver in this class. Just what he can do, the easiest pro comparison for those who don't spend a lot of time reading scouting reports and watching the film and all that. The simplest, most accurate, I think, pro comparison is DeAndre Hopkins, who just got traded from the Houston Texans to the Arizona Cardinals. Can you imagine taking a guy like Nuke Hopkins, plugging him in opposite of Courtland Sutton with Drew Lock as the trigger man? Like, I don't know. To me, that would be just that body control, the athleticism, being able to go up and grab it. Not necessarily the fastest. CeeDee Lamb runs the exact same 40 as Courtland Sutton, which is a 4.5. But, man, those two together I think would make a phenomenal duo.
Yeah, he's fast enough, and I'm a big fan of Lamb's and Jerry Jeudy as well. That's why I'm saying I'm not too discriminatory. If the Broncos can end up with any of the big three, depending on if they stay put at 15, maybe move up a few spots, I'd be happy with that. But the case in point is no matter how you rationalize it or anyone else, they need a wide receiver within the first 2 rounds, preferably the top wide receiver, the blue chip prospects. If they can fall into their lap at 15, great. Whether it's Lamb, Jeudy, or Ruggs, I don't really matter. It doesn't really matter to me. I just want Locke to have that weapon that he so badly needs.
The QBs, Kevin Hansen, kind of raised some eyebrows with his selection for the Broncos. First off, he had the Broncos trading back with the Philadelphia Eagles to pick 21. Who did the Eagles take at 15? Henry Ruggs. The Broncos then at pick 21, though, Zach, take Patrick Queen, the linebacker from LSU. Now, when I first read this, in fact, I think I read it the first time while we were podcasting earlier this past week, and I kind of laughed it off. But then after I went back and kind of spent some time chewing on it, thinking about it, whatever, Patrick Queen is an option if the Broncos were to trade back into let's say the back third of the first round. I don't hate the idea. And of course, that's assuming, Zach, that, the blue chip 3 wide receivers are off the table. But what are your thoughts to the Broncos taking a Patrick Queen or a Kenneth Murray? For some reason, his name I can never. I just need to put like a sticker up on my wall. Kenneth Murray. Anyway, your thoughts on that linebacker back end first round?
It's not my preference to trade down, and it's definitely not my preference if the Broncos trade down to target an inside linebacker. If there's a Cushenberry on the board, if there's a Kinlaw on the board, you gotta prioritize those players. Maybe even a receiver falls there. I like Murray more than Queen, but even then, I would want to trade back to get Drew Lock, either a wide receiver or protection. They don't have a starting center right now. Cushenberry in the last couple picks of the first round from 20 to 32, that's a better value for them than gambling at 15. Regardless, they need a center. They need a wide receiver. So if they move back, which is not my preference, to take away an opportunity to land a blue chip prospect, I wouldn't target an inside linebacker. And if I did, I want Murray more than Queen, but that's just my opinion.
Things took a surprising turn with NBC Sports mock draft. They had the Broncos staying at 15 and taking CJ Henderson, the corner from Florida, who, here's the thing about Henderson. He might be as talented or have the same type of ceiling as a cover guy as Jeff Okudah. But the problem is he's not as polished in that department yet. He's still a significantly more raw prospect. And Zach, he has an aversion to tackling. Yep. What do we know about Vic Fangio and the demands at the cornerback and DB positions? Tackling is non-negotiable. So that doesn't completely remove a CJ Henderson out of the equation for the Broncos in the first round. but I think he's one of the more least likely players to interest Elway and Fangio of the different corners that are going to be there for the taking, including, Christian Fulton, who I think is similar to Henderson in terms of pros, cons, and Jeff Gladney of TCU.
I was going to say him and Fulton should not be in the consideration at all, even if the Broncos trade down. I mean, they brought back Devontae Bosby. They just acquired A.J. Boye. They have high hopes for him. They're okay at cornerback. They can add one in the later rounds to take the guy at 15, potentially passing on a Becton, potentially passing on a Lamb or a Judy. You just cannot do that. It cannot be a cornerback and inside linebacker at 15 if those blue chip receivers or linemen on the board. Drew Lock, again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but he is the most important piece of this puzzle, and the Broncos have to assuage him any means necessary at 15.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Draft Tech, and I just realized I think I put a typo in their name. I think it's just one T. Anyway, Draft Tech is one of the bigger draft sites on the internet. They had the Broncos standing pat at 15 and taking the wunderkid defensive lineman, the raw dude from South Carolina with a ceiling that might be limitless, Javon Kinlaw. This could be the next Chris Jones, Zach, or he could be a bust. Yeah, he could fall somewhere in between, but that's the kind of boomer bust type of player that he represents for the Denver Broncos and any team looking to take him in round one. I don't hate it. I'm okay with it. I would be fine if the Broncos took Javon Kinlaw. I think our opinions kind of diverge on this point. I think you're a little bit more Broncos need to get a wideout and one of the blue chip 3 if possible in the first round, whereas I'm a little more ambivalent to it. However, your thoughts on Javon Kinlaw as the pick at 15?
He does have some, high risk, high reward potential, but I see a lot of Jarrell Casey in him, Chad, in the best case scenario. Just a multi-time Pro Bowler, can get after the quarterback and stop the run. I like his work ethic. I would not hate this pick at 15. I would like it a lot more than a Henderson or another cornerback there, but again, I'd like it less than a wide receiver or an offensive lineman. That just has to be the preference, depending on how the board falls. If all the linemen are gone, if all the top receivers are gone, I wouldn't mind Kinlaw if he's still there. But if they take Kinlaw over CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy, I don't think I can get on board with that, especially with Shelby Harris coming back, Chad.
Fair point, my friend. All right, let's grab this last one, then we'll get back to the comment stream, the chat stream. The Draft Network's Joe Marino, arguably the preeminent number one draft website. Many of our listeners use their mock draft engine, their simulator, and they do great work. Joe Marino, there's my typo there. He had him taken at 15 as well. Derek Brown, defensive tackle, Auburn. Now, this is a guy that's more an interior player, more of a tackle than he is like a 5-tech defensive end, although he can do either. His floor is higher than a Javon Kinlaw's, but his ceiling's probably a little bit less. Very strong player. He's a guy that Vic Fangio could make a lot of hay with. And, I mean, as far as your plug-and-play nose tackle, he could literally step in out of the gates and not only replace Mike Purcell as the starting nose tackle, but provide a significant upgrade. He's a very dynamic, strong interior player at the point of attack. And as a one-gap type of guy, I think he could really succeed with Vic Fangio, but it wouldn't be the sexiest of picks, right, Zach, even though Derek Brown, for the majority of the 2019 college season, he was being projected as a top 5 caliber pick, like a Marcel Darius caliber pick for, this coming draft. So your thoughts on Derek Brown at 15?
His floor is pretty high, and I don't doubt that he'd make a pretty instant impact in Vic Fangio's defense, but you just re-signed Shelby Harris. You used a former high-round pick on Draymond Jones. You just acquired Jarrell Casey as defensive tackle. You're paying him $13 million this season. Do you really need someone like Derek Brown to be added to that defensive line, to pass on a receiver or an offensive lineman? Again, I'm saying the same thing, but it holds true. If they're going to go for a defensive lineman, I'd rather have the versatility and position flexibility of a Kinlaw versus Derek Brown, who, like you mentioned, Chad, his ceiling is a lot lower than someone like Kinlaw.
All right, guys, there's your mock draft roundup. Let's grab what's on your mind and see what's going on in the comment stream. Let's grab Guy University on YouTube. Says, y'all think the Giants would be willing to swap picks, swap pick 4 with Denver, being that they're farther away than the Broncos are in terms of competing? I would propose our 1st and 3rd this year and our 1st next year. Would you be willing to give up that kind of a ransom to move up and grab Simmons, Isaiah Simmons?
I don't know. I mean, the first round pick next year, that's kind of the deal breaker for me because you never know what that first round pick is going to be and you never know what the Broncos' needs are going to be next year. I mean, they have Todd Davis. He's replaceable for sure, but they have A.J. Johnson. They have needs throughout the roster. And from what I'm hearing, Chad, the Giants love Simmons. They might not want to move out of that pick regardless. They might want to just hold on to it and take their guy. But top 4, I wouldn't move up for him that far. As much as I love him, I'd go to maybe 7 or 8. Would not jump into the top 5. It's just too cost prohibitive.
All right, let's grab Marcos jumping in with the $5 super chat. Thank you, Marcos. How many touchdowns do you think Courtland Sutton will have in 2020? What do you think, Zach? I think last year he had 6, and that was playing with 3 different starting quarterbacks. Yeah. What's your projection?
I'm going to say double that and say 12. I just think that's super easy for someone like Courtland Sutton. It's not just between the 20s and the red zone. Just at any point on the field, if you put a decoy like a Henry Ruggs or a Lamb next to him, it's going to open up so much more real estate for Courtland Sutton. You have Melvin Gordon in the mix, Phillip Lindsay, Noah Fant. I mean, you can't cover everyone. So Courtland Sutton should finally get more one-on-ones, and we all know what happens when he gets that opportunity. He snatches your soul. I'm going to say 12 touchdowns, a majority of which coming in the red zone, but he's going to thrive and make the Pro Bowl this season.
I like that. He snatches your soul. Just ask, was it Denzel Ward? I think it was Denzel Ward in that Browns game in Week 9, that phenomenal catch. Of course, Brandon Allen, the one throwing it, but that one down the right sideline, south stands, and he just jumps in front of Denzel Ward and just plucks the ball and demands it. Touchdown Broncos. He's just a phenomenal young player, and I can't wait to see what he can do in his 3rd season and his first full season, hopefully, playing with Drew Lock as the starting quarterback. All right, let's grab. There he is. Talk about Mount Rushmore.
There he is.
Close friend of the show, big member of this community. $20 super chat. Thank you, Stu. That means a lot to us, brother.
Hope you're hanging in well.
Hope you're staying healthy and safe, my friend. All right, let's see what else we got here. Should I run? Let's grab Robert. Should I run my mocks based off player power chart or predictive board? Are you talking to somebody specifically? Maybe that's a conversation that we're just kind of stumbling into, but I guess that's just up to you, dude. That's up to you. Talking about, you can use these, and it's grown and grown over this year in particular, Zach. The mock draft machines, the simulators like the Draft Network does one, and there are a bunch of different places you can do mock draft simulations. Like it's exploded in terms of it's not just media and blogs doing them now or using them to create content. It's great because all the fans under the sun can go use these simulators and have a blast. And we get tagged on them on a daily basis on Twitter, asking our thoughts and opinions on this mock draft haul or that mock draft haul. And it's really fun, creates a lot of great conversation, but I'm sure that's what Robert's speaking to there.
There's so many more tools now than when we first got into this business, Chad. There was nothing as interactive as there is now, and it's just fun for the fan to kind of play around and simulate what the draft can be.
Anthony jumps in with a $5 super chat. Thank you, my friend.
Appreciate you, Anthony.
Do teams trading in the draft discuss the player that will be taken to make sure the team trading back doesn't lose the player they want? I'm sure that those type of conversations take place. I mean, it only stands to reason, Zach. If a player is, do teams trading in the draft discuss the player that will be taken to make sure the team trading back doesn't lose the player they want? Yeah, absolutely. I think they get assurances, right, Zach?
If I'm reading that question correctly, yeah. I mean, every team has so many contingency plans, plan A, plan B, plan C, all the way to plan Z. It's the biggest investment for these multi-billion-dollar franchises to make every single season, and especially this season with the draft being so different. Yeah, there's different contingencies in place, so they definitely have those discussions for sure.
Terry Randall up in Canada, Super Chat Superstar, proving, as always, that Broncos country is not a geographic location. It is a state of being. Appreciate that $5 super chat, Terry. He says, if Locke's TD over-under is 25, what are you taking? Over. Hashtag football priest, hashtag state of being. Ooh. Try and be as straight up and legit on this as possible. I'm going to we'll take the under just to play it safe. I'll take the under. But what do you think?
Chad got your Kelberman negativity going tonight, I see. I'm gonna go with the over on this. I'm gonna say 28 would be the over under. I'm just very optimistic for what Locke can do this year, especially if you give him the protection and the weapons to succeed. I just love what he can bring to the table as that gunslinging franchise quarterback. So I'm taking over 25 for sure.
For what it's worth, there is some empirical evidence that would bolster and support the over. I mean, just look at what Daniel Jones did last year in 12 games in Shermer's offense, 24 touchdown passes. However, even though the proliferation of the passing attack since 2008 has progressed significantly, I mean, Jay Cutler had his career year in 2008 as a Denver Bronco. What was it? 24, 25 touchdowns. I think it was 24 actually off the top of my head. It's a lot of touchdown passes, believe it or not. It's a lot. That's why I've been so impressed. I was so impressed by Daniel Jones' production last year. So I hope it's the over, and I think there's a lot of evidence to support that it will be over. Ben Fuller jumping in with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Ben. Assuming we add some more speed to the offense, does Shermer's scheme involve moving the pocket at all? With Locke's mobility, do you think getting him rolling out of the pocket could help the offense? Zach, I don't see a lot of that from Shermer's scheme as far as the moving pocket and bootlegs and rollouts. You know, it's a little bit more common in the under center type of offenses that you see in the West Coast, you know, variants from the Gary Kubiaks to the John Grudens to all. Doesn't mean that they won't utilize Locke's athleticism. Right. I think you'll see a lot more RPOs. You'll see some sets and some opportunities where Locke can kind of use his move ability, kind of a point guard moving ability to distribute the ball and buy time. But I don't think those days of the naked boots and the moving pockets, I don't think you're going to see that as a predominant element of the Broncos scheme.
Yeah, I don't doubt at all they're going to have some plays where they roll the pocket or you know, roll him out to one side or the other, have him throw across his body, but they're not going to turn him into Lamar Jackson either. He's just not that type of quarterback. They're going to let his mobility come out naturally, Chad. He can climb the pocket. He can move around. He won't be so stone-footed like Joe Flacco. It will come out naturally with Drew Lock's skill set. So are they going to seek that out? Are they going to call plays specifically to move the pocket? A few times, every couple games or so, but it's not going to be an overarching theme of Shermer's offense.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Brian jumps in, Super Chat superstar on the Mount Rushmore.
Thank you, Brian.
Still holds the all-time individual Super Chat record. Appreciate you, my friend. He wants CeeDee Lamb, and we definitely understand that sentiment. Jordan checking in. What's up, gentlemen? Spent the entire weekend moving from Parker to Broomfield, so I'm exhausted. Glad to have my football priest to chill with.
Thank you,
see you, my friend.
Appreciate that.
Frank Romano. Me again, Zach. Ruggs has bad stats in the SEC, runs a fast 40. Why the top 15? Name one speed receiver that can run, block, and is not an injury concern. Fuller? Nope. Tyreek Hill? I mean, how much do you need a speed receiver to block, though, Franco?
All right.
I mean,
DeAndre Hopkins pretty good at blocking.
Yeah, but I mean, seriously, that's the last thing you've drafted a wide receiver to do. I mean, you coach them up on it, you teach them how to do it, and you demand that they put effort in on that side of things. But Zach, nobody got drafted. I mean, maybe this is hyperbole. No wide receiver ever got drafted based on their blocking acumen.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's a nice quality to have on top, like Larry Fitzgerald's and the Hines Wards of the NFL. But if you draft Henry Ruggs, it's to run down the field, to make plays and catch passes from your franchise quarterback. Blocking is secondary. They have enough blockers. They just signed Nick Vannett to be a blocker. They don't need their wide receiver to be a predominantly blocking player. It's a secondary skill set they can have. But the primary skill set is catching the ball and doing it quickly.
Boise Man jumps in with the $5 super chat. Appreciate
Thank you,
my friend. I agree we shouldn't trade up for a wide receiver. I'd sell the farm for Simmons, but that's it. I'd say see what falls to 15. If no wide receiver, then trade back for a center. And I think that's a solid strategy. Listen, I've talked about Simmons as being, and agreed with Zach on the topic of Simmons being one of the few prospects I'd be comfortable trading up for. But I want to qualify that. If it involves giving up an additional first-round pick, I'm out on that. The only time you do that is if you're moving up to grab your franchise quarterback of the future. Broncos have their franchise quarterback, so they need to stockpile their premium round picks especially. I mean, right now they're sitting at 10 picks in this class or in this draft. They're probably not going to end up making 10 picks, But those first 5, the top 5 they have in the top 100, those are crucial, and that applies to each and every single draft class. So for me, if it involves moving up for a first, with an additional first rounder, I don't like it. But this strategy of, standing pat, seeing what falls to 15, exploring a trade back if the wide receiver you want isn't there.
And the thing is, if you want to move up into the top 5, the top 6, you're going to have to give up a first-round pick. So I'm with you. That's off the table for me. As much as I love Simmons, Boise Man and I share a brain exactly on this topic. Don't move back if you don't have to. Don't move up if you don't have to. You could make a call for Simmons, but see what's there at 15. If nothing's there, go back and get your offensive lineman for Drew Lock. One way or the other, you're helping Drew Lock in the first round.
All right, let me just grab this really quick. Fernando jumps in with the $5 super chat. Appreciate you, Fernando. Sir. Do you guys think Troy Dye out of Oregon, the linebacker, is a good fit in our defense? If so, should Denver look at him seriously? Also, love the pod. Keep it up. Thanks, Fernando. Well, let's take a look at some of his measurables real quick. Mr. Troy Dye. Let's just take a look at what he did at the combine. 6'3", 231. He's got some long arms. Let's see if it shows his. Did he not run at the combine? Doesn't look like he did. He's not a player that, Zach, I've spent any time studying on film, but Lance Zierlein of NFL.com has his pro comparison as Houston's Zach Cunningham. So solid. I mean, I'd have to spend a little bit more time looking into that, Fernando, to give you the most specific answer. But I think Vic Fangio can make almost any linebacker fit. It's just a matter of what degree do they succeed in his scheme. I couldn't give you an honest answer on Dye right now.
I mean, plus they might go back to that well after drafting Justin Holland. So, I mean, they already have that Oregon young linebacker on the roster. But sure, I mean, in the middle rounds, a developmental guy, like Chad said, which I echo, any linebacker, even the most average, even Todd Davis looked a little better in a Fangio system. So if Dye isn't to be that guy, I have no qualms about him succeeding in a Fangio scheme.
This is a fair point from Jody on Facebook. In 2013, let me remind you, Broncos, most points ever scored by an offense in the history of the game, 606 points, almost averaged 40 a game without a speed guy. Let's roll it back. Now, you had the greatest trigger man in the history of the passing offense, which was Peyton Manning, but you had DT, Demaryius Thomas on one side. You had Eric Decker on the other, Wes Welker in the slot, and Julius Thomas. All of them dynamic in their own way. None of them that blazing speed demon. So, yeah, there are a lot of different ways to skin that cat. But I think, Zach, why speed is being focused on so much in this class, and especially as it relates to the Broncos, is everyone's trying to copycat what the Chiefs have.
Yeah, and in 2013, they had Peyton Manning, and not just Peyton Manning, but a prime Peyton Manning. He throws receivers open. He makes everyone around him so much better. It's why Tom Brady succeeded for so many years into his 40s with a below-average supporting cast. Those elite Hall of Fame first-ballot quarterbacks literally could take you or I off the street and make us Pro Bowl receivers. That's why they didn't need a speed receiver, but Drew Lock is not Peyton Manning. As much as I hate to say that, he's just not. He has a long way to go, lots to learn, very raw, so he needs that safety blanket matching his arm strength of a fast wide receiver with hands that can run the full route tree, and that's a first-round receiver in this draft. So that's the difference between 2013 and the 2020 Denver Broncos.
Well said. Larry jumps in with a $2 super chat. Appreciate you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
If we move up for a wide receiver, it has to be Jerry Jeudy, says Larry. And listen, again, beauty is something that's always going to be in the eye of the beholder. If your heart is set on Jerry Jeudy, it's one of the big three. If you're going to take a wideout in the first round, if it's one of the big three, Judy's among them. He's a fine young player. He's going to be a phenomenal talent at the next level. He's probably the safest of the big three. He's probably the safest pick between those three, Zach.
Look at the contrasting opinions, though, Chad. 3 different questions about receivers. One said we have to get CeeDee Lamb. One said we have to get Ruggs. One said we have to get, Jerry Jeudy. It's all subjective as to who you want. But the fact is, any of those 3 receivers would look great in a Broncos uniform. Any of those 3 would immensely help this offense and take Drew Lock to the next level.
One of our Super Chat superstars, Edward Keating himself. Is this a different account for you, Edward? Because unless you changed it up, maybe you did. With a $5 Super Chat. Appreciate you, my friend. Hope everything's going okay. Hope the new job is rolling for you. He says, I am so ready for Broncos football, Denver Broncos for life. Well, guess what? Unfortunately, as you know, my friend, we still, even if it was a perfect world right now, and it was the same as it was last year, we're still, let's see, April to May, May to June, June to July, 3 months and some change till training camp is supposed to happen. And then another couple of weeks, you got the preseason. So you're 4 months, 5 months, depending on how you want to qualify that. But it'll come. It'll come, Edward. Stay positive, my friend.
In a normal offseason, we would have OTAs and mini camps as soon as next month. And the offseason program would be starting this month. So, we're going to try to bridge the gap until this issue settles down and football comes back to the forefront.
Amen. Buana Beast, the mayor of our Mile High Huddle community there on YouTube, says, Kenneth Murray is not an option, I feel, which I've seen a few times at 15. I think he'd be more of an option, Buana, at pick 46 if he lasted that long, which is possible, but not from most of the mocks. If you read the full first round, they have him as a late first round pick. I would be stunned if Kenneth Murray were the pick at 15, Zach.
It would be a worst case scenario where all the offensive linemen, all the big time offensive players who the Broncos would target would have to be off the board. Kinlaw as well. It would just be a last resort pick for the Broncos and a reach, in my opinion, at 15. If they want to move down to the 20s and take Murray, fine. But at 15, with all the other positions that need to be filled, it would be a reach.
Shadif Henson jumps in with a $20 super chat. Thank you, Shadif. I agree with Kyle. I understand what speed can do for our offense. I'm not sold on Ruggs for speed only, though. I wouldn't trade up for a number 2 receiver when guys like Jefferson or Mims might be a better fit, especially from a blocking standpoint. And that's fair. I mean, Jefferson and Mims, depending on who you ask, are pretty much viewed as the 4th or 5th, kind of rotate each one. You decide wideouts in this class. I'm with you. In that, Shadif, I lean a little bit more towards doing something else in the first round at pick 15 and trying to get one of these 2 guys possibly in the second round, even if that meant you had to trade up a little bit to grab one of them. But Ruggs, I'm telling you right now, he's not a what was that kid's name that went to Cincy? John
Ross. I was going to make the same exact point.
That's not what he is, dude. Right. He really isn't.
Exactly. He's not just a speed guy. He's not just a fast guy who runs a 9 route down the field. He has good hands. He can run the full route tree. Came from a pretty pro-style offense with great talent surrounding him. He still made plays, even with Tua and his limitations as well. I would like all those receivers, but the difference is Jefferson and Mims are a little more like Cortland Sutton. They're long gliders as opposed to being true speed demons. Ruggs, Lamb, Judy, they're more speedsters, which the Broncos need. I wouldn't complain if they got either of the big 5, but there's kind of a big gap, or not a big gap, but a gap nonetheless, between the big 3 and players like Mims and Jefferson.
James jumps in and says, it's worth pointing out the 10-yard splits at the combine, and that's why I'm not down on these prospects at all. Ruggs with a 1.43 second 10-yard split, Lamb 1.46 seconds, Judy 1.48, and then Mims, Pittman, and Duvernay at 1.51, which shows some explosiveness and lateral twitchiness, Zach.
Yeah, it's what the Broncos need in spades. Let's
grab Jeff jumps in with a $5 super chat, one of our superstars, great longtime listener of the show. Appreciate you, Jeff. He says, Anthony Robbins says, Awaken the Giant Within. I've read that book, by the way. If you want to be successful like someone, mirror their behavior. We need to emulate offenses like San Francisco, KC, New Orleans, etc., in my opinion. # Denver Broncos for life. Hey, man. If you're reading Anthony Robbins, then you're getting some good information. And anyone out there going through personal struggles, man, that book will get you fired up. Any of his books will get you fired up and ready to take on whatever obstacle life can throw at you. But his point, though, is a salient one. The Broncos, and I think that's what you're going to see a guy like Pat Shurmur, one of the reasons Vic Fangio wanted him is exactly that. It's a copycat league. They want to put something in place that looks like the Kansas City offense and looks a little bit more like, probably a hybrid between the San Francisco and KC offense, something a little more innovative, something a little more cutting edge.
Fake it until you make it. That's exactly where that expression is born from. And I wouldn't want the Broncos, this is where I diverge from the Broncos completely emulating the Chiefs. They can't govern themselves around what the Chiefs have done. They have to be the Broncos. They do not have Tyreek Hill. They do not have Mahomes. They have Locke and whoever they're going to draft. So you can take little elements from what they've done. You can use some of their ideas they brought to the table in the NFL and how they changed the game in certain aspects, but don't try to be the new Kansas City Chiefs, be the new Denver Broncos, and I think they'll succeed that way.
Jody Moncrief has a question for you, Zach. Are you okay with the tight ends running wild on Todd Davis, who can't cover them? In other words,
no,
the idea of not taking a Kenneth Murray or a Patrick Queen in the first round or whatever.
I mean, I've been one of the biggest Todd Davis haters. Anyone who's followed me for last couple of years now knows I'm one of his biggest detractors. But the fact of the matter is, he's a good 2-down linebacker. The fact of the matter is, they do have Johnson next to him, who's a more dynamic player. The fact of the matter is, they will draft an inside linebacker at some point. It just doesn't have to be at 15. It doesn't have to be their first round pick. They can get a guy in a Vic Fangio defense, and as he's shown, as you said, Chad, he can make mostly any linebacker succeed. He can take the Fangio bump and apply it to any player. It doesn't have to be Kenneth Murray. You use who they're going to draft, the sum of all their parts, and Fangio's knowledge, his scheme, and ability. You can take away the tight ends. You can limit them. You're never going to fully stop the Travis Kelce's, but you can limit them. And the Fangio system especially can bring that to the table.
We saw it. I mean, they didn't bat 1,000 against tight ends last year. There were a few that managed to squeak through, but it wasn't the consistent threat and problem and Achilles heel for this defense under Fangio that it had been the previous 5 years. Noel jumps in and says, you guys rock on Facebook. Would you guys use one of our third-round picks on Amik Robertson, the corner from Louisiana Tech, a fearless defender with 14 interceptions in college? I would say, Noel, that's a kind of a starting point for Amik. It's the third, fourth round, something like that. Yeah. I would be absolutely okay with it. And, yeah, the dude was a complete ball hawk, Zach, and the Broncos could use that kind of impact on D.
You have to be wary about a third-round Broncos cornerback considering the recent history, but I really wouldn't touch one until the third round, Chad. That position, to me, can wait. You can make do with what they have right now, but in the third, they want to target him. I'm all for that.
Pranked Films jumps in. And by the way, Pranked Films, I hope you saw on our makeup episode yesterday, that we did grab your question from Thursday. But anyway, he jumps back in, $5 super chat. Appreciate you. Who do you think is the most realistic, complete player Denver could draft at pick 15? How do you feel about CeeDee Lamb to the Broncos? Again, CeeDee Lamb's my favorite of these in this wide receiver class, but a complete player, I think, honestly, if you're just looking for a finished product with a really high floor and it doesn't mean he has a low ceiling, but we talked about him in the mock draft roundup. Probably Derek Brown from Auburn is about as complete as it gets, at least on that side of things. Isaiah Simmons is another one that, even though he's still got a lot of room to grow and develop, he's a very polished product already. Jeffrey Okudah. But at pick 15, neither of those two guys are going to be a realistic option. Honestly, I think Cushenberry, the center from LSU, would be another complete. But sometimes that's not your only – I shouldn't say sometimes. That's not your only consideration when you're making the pick in the first round. Oftentimes you are – making that pick based on ceiling, trying to project what that's going to look like in your scheme and whatnot. But CeeDee Lamb, he's also about as complete as it gets from this wide receiver class.
Yeah, Tristan Wirfs, another offensive lineman at 15. Yeah. That's a mostly complete player who would step in right away and contribute. In terms of receivers, Jerry Jeudy, I think, is a little more advanced than a Henry Ruggs. So if you're talking about complete players who'd be realistic, there's a chance he falls to the Broncos. And he's, I think, a better technician. He has some speed to his game. I think his hands are a little better. He's a better blocker if you're looking for that. So a complete player, realistically, Jerry Jeudy among the receivers, or CeeDee Lamb. Again, I'm not discriminating.
All right. Right as I get to the bottom of the stream, it does its little jump on me. And let's see if I can get back to where we were really quick. No, it's going to – I might have to hop over. Terry loves my dad hat. Yep. This particular hat is not available on huddleuppod.com for sale, but there is a Mile High Huddle dad hat that is available if you're into that. Appreciate the super chat, my friend. Zach, let me grab this fella right here who we know and love, Ron W. In fact, you grab him. I just want to circle over to YouTube real quick, and I'll chip in after you.
Yeah, Ron jumping in with a $10 donation. I always appreciate you, Ron. Yes, thank you so much for that. He says, hey, guys, I don't see a lot of mocks having us take Jeudy. Don't get me wrong. I prefer Ruggs, but Jeudy would be equally talented and provide us with polished route running thoughts. Ron, the point literally I just made, he's a more, I think, complete player, not really as explosive overall or quick as Henry Ruggs, but Judy's a little more advanced as a wide receiver overall. I agree with you there. That's why I'm saying if it's Judy at 15, I'm okay with that. If it's CeeDee Lamb, I'm okay with that. If it's Henry Ruggs, I'm okay with that. They all bring explosive ability to the table. It's just a matter of opinion. It's subjective. It's who you like. It's who passes your eye test. It's who you want on the Broncos. To me, I'm easy. Any of those three, I'd be okay with.
I would too. I mean, any of those three, if it's not my preferred go-to, as I've said a million times now, in the first round, but if they came away, the Broncos, with any one of those three, including Jerry Jeudy, I'm not going to pan that as a bad pick. Like, I can get behind that. All right, so it did do one of those jumps on us, and there's two or three super chats. We're going to have to do this on Chris McKay with a $10 super chat. We appreciate you, Chris. What do you think of Lindsey versus Gordon this year for touches? This is a sensitive topic at the Huddle Up podcast. Zach, I'll let you start with this one, bro.
I think Gordon will be the starter by title. He's going to be the RB1, and I think the Broncos' inclination at first will be to give him the majority of touches, more likely a 55-45 split. It's just they gave him the big contract. He's one of the highest paid running backs on a per year basis now, and Phillip Lindsay's making peanuts compared to that. So Gordon will get the first crack at being the bell cow, but I don't think Lindsay will keep himself off the field for long. He's going to make enough plays where it forces the Broncos to make it more of a timeshare and make it more of an even split. So to answer the question, Gordon will start out initially with more touches, but as Lindsay gets going and using that complementary system, I think he'll end up with a fair share as well.
We'll see how that shakes out. Again, I maintain that no running back yet to cross paths with Phillip Lindsay has been able to vanquish him in an open competition. He emerges as the guy when the dust finally settles on any of these competitions. He's the one that emerges as the primary ball carrier. Now, that doesn't guarantee that it's going to happen this time. There's a first time for everything. But I think you're going to see, however it ends up shaking out, I think you're going to see Phillip Lindsay continue to get his traditional 15 or so touches as a baseline per game. And Melvin Gordon, it's just going to be a question of usage, how they each get used and featured in this offense. And there's just still so much about this we don't know, because we're not trying to graft what we know about Rich Scangarello's offense, a player to a scheme we already know. Yeah, we know kind of the basic Shermer spread West Coast. It's more about spacing. They don't use tight ends. We know some things about it, but until he puts it into practice with this personnel Broncos are bringing to the table, it's hard to project exactly how it's going to look. But we'll see how it shakes out. Glenn, one of our superstars,
thank you,
jumped
Glenn,
in with a $5 super chat. Thanks, Glenn. He says, if Denver trades back, how far would you move? Whom would you pick? And what return would you expect to get on the trade? I don't know. I think Philadelphia, that who was it? The MMQB actually, that had the Broncos trading back to 21. They took Patrick Queen. That's probably, somewhere in that back third of the first round. You're probably not at 15. You're not going to get anywhere near the haul that you got from Pittsburgh last year, jumping from 10 to 20. Yeah. But a third round pick, I mean, if you could come away with a third round pick and if it's in the back end of the first round, we've talked about a few of the options, but you're looking at a Lloyd Cushenberry from LSU. You're looking at Cesar Ruiz from Michigan. You can look at the linebacker prospects. You can look at a couple of corners like Jeff Gladney. We'll see where C.J. Henderson falls in this whole thing. There will be some options if the Broncos do end up doing that. And Zach, I mean, it's about 50-50. Elway, when it comes to the draft in the first round, he's about half the time he executes a trade up or a trade back. So there's a good bet that'll happen again on April 23rd.
I wouldn't go so far back to where I'd risk losing the guy I'd want in that slot, though, Chad. So I wouldn't move from 15 to 25. I'd move from 15 to 21, 22, that range. And I would do it only so I don't have to reach for a guy at 15. You could pick up an extra draft pick or two, maybe a second and a fourth, a combination of picks. That would depend on how far they're moving down. But they're at least going to net a third-round pick from that process. I don't care about the picks so much. So they already have 3 third-round picks. It's to get your guy at a better value. If they move down to 2021, I'm targeting Cushenberry, and failing that, I'm probably going for a Kenneth Murray. I'm probably going for maybe if Kinlaw's on the board, which he won't be, but I'm looking for the offensive lineman, and someone like Cushenberry in the 20 range is a lot more palatable than taking him at 15.
Agreed. All right, let's grab Jake, who jumped in with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Jake. He says, I would be okay with trading back and getting more second-round picks, a second-round pick or picks. It's a deep wide receiver class and would be an awesome day 2 with 5 picks on the board. Can't wait until April. Yeah, I mean, if you can stockpile more picks, it's just second-round pick. It's going to be hard to get if you're at 15, but it depends on how desperate the team trying to get up to that spot really is, Zach.
I guarantee you if the Broncos move back, they're going to package the picks they get and move back up, whether it's the first round or the second round. They're not going to make all of those picks. They already have too many picks and they know what to do with right now, Chad. It's immaterial to make all those draft picks. So my prediction is if they do move back to the 20s, whatever they gather in that trade, they will use then to move back for a player they like. Just like last year they did with Drew Lock moving up to 42.
All right, let's grab TG also, who the chat passed by his super chat card. Appreciate the super chat, TG.
It's awesome, TG. Thank you.
You're up there on the Mount Rushmore. You know that. We love you. He says, if we don't get any of the big 3 wideouts, let's go get Mims. Last night on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast that I did with Eric, he's like, look, worst case scenario, if you miss out on the big 3, you still could take Mims at pick 15. Mims, let's not forget, if it's about speed, he has a phenomenal size speed combo. He's 6'3", but he brings 4.38 speed. So, there's some downsides to Mims as a prospect. You can go read. In fact, today we published at milehighhuddle.com the Mims Finding Broncos from Eric Trickle. Go read that report. Go read how he would fit in Denver. But I wouldn't hate the idea, although if you're going to go get Mims, I'd take someone else at 15 or trade back and try and get Mims on the back half or back third of the first round.
I'm fully right there with you. As a matter of fact, I just wrote about Mims today, and he's more quick than he is fast, Chad. He is actually a little more Cortland Sutton than he is Tyreek Hill, and you'd love to have 2 Cortland Suttons on the field, but preferably I'd like to have a little bit of a faster prospect, a speedier prospect. So would I place him above a Ruggs or a Judy or a Lamb? No. But would I cry if he's the pick in the second round, late first round? No as well. You have to import at least one blue chip wide receiver, no matter who it is, to the Broncos offense.
All right, let's see. Now we get back into the stream here. Grab James Moss, $20 super chat. Wow, thank you, James.
It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
He says, sorry, haven't tuned in. I've been sick.
Hope you feel better.
I hope it's not the thing we're all worried about right now. And if so, I hope you're feeling better, my friend. Either way, he says, I feel Tua is the X factor of the draft. With the uncertainty of his injury, if he falls to us and someone offers a trade, what would you see happening? So if Tua were to fall to pick 15 and someone offers a trade, I think the Broncos take that trade. They're not going to take Tua. They're going to, and depending on how far back it is and what the trade entails, Tua is not an option for this team. The Broncos have their quarterback of the future, at least for the next 3 years. They're going to ride this out with Locke and see how it shakes out. Tua could be a generational player. We'll see. But he brings a significant injury jacket to the table, which is going to scare some teams.
Yeah, it will. And I don't know if the Broncos would take him for the sole purpose of trading him. They got to do what's best for business, Chad. They can't play around with that draft pick. So as much as it'd be tempting to just secure his rights and then trade him for a haul, I think they would pass him up if he did fall, which he won't, to that spot, and go get their guy, whether it's receiver or whoever else. So I don't see that happening or materializing later this month.
Brian jumps back in with a $5 super chat. Appreciate you, Brian. Zach, if you honestly think this, or if you honestly think any of the top 3 receivers would help Locke, then why not make sure we get one of them?
All for it. I wouldn't sell the farm for any of those receivers. That's the difference. I'm not going to move in the top 5 and give up a majority of my capital to get one when there's a good chance one of them will fall into the Broncos' laps anyway. But 11 or 12, they want to leapfrog the Niners, another team. All for it.
I'm going to let Zach tackle this one. I'll read Robert Mann's question here. What would it take to trade for OBJ? It seems like he wants out of Cleveland. Did he play for Shermer in New York? Yes, he did. I would rather have him than gamble on one of these top 3 rookies. Zach, do what you're going to do.
I don't agree with that. I mean, he's overpriced. He's a literal head case. I mean, he's not. I think he peaked as a player. I really do. I mean, he had that catch and he had his Giants years. He got to Cleveland. Jarvis Landry was a better receiver than Odell Beckham. He would just be more of a distraction than he would be a help. He would torpedo this offense. He would be a toxic personality in the locker room. It's the last thing a Vic Fangio, Drew Lock outfit needs in 2020 is Odell Beckham. Go draft Henry Ruggs. Go draft CeeDee Lamb, a fraction of the cost. No worries, no character concerns. Keep the hell away from Odell Beckham Jr.
Amen. I can't add anything more than the knowledge Zach just dropped there. Boise Man jumps back in, $5 super chat. Appreciate you. He says, my hours were cut due to what's going on. We all know what it is. That sucks, dude. That sucks, brother.
Sorry to hear that.
He says, but on the bright side, I get to listen live now. Yeah, it's good to have you in the streams, brother. He says, appreciate the continued content to help us through this tough time. And, I just want to point out, Boise, we're not asking you to super chat if things are tough, if things are tight.
Yeah.
Don't feel like you need to do that. Just having you participating in these live streams and contributing to the conversation is everything for us. So we appreciate that super chat, my friend, and hope things turn soon for you up there in Boise. There's TG jumping back in. Speaking of superstars, appreciate you, brother. He says, I've watched all of Ruggs' games. He really struggles when he gets pressed on the line by corners and can't get off them. Mims runs a 4.3 40, so he is a speed guy. That is, I believe, let me pull this up real quick. Bear with me one sec, you guys. There he is. All right, bear with me one second. There's a reason I'm putting a delay here. Let me read to you the cons. This is from Eric Trickle's Finding Broncos scouting report on Henry Ruggs. Quote, on as far as cons go, physical corners can knock him off his routes. Not much wiggle to avoid tackles. Deep ball tracking ability can be hit or miss. His routes could be cleaner. He doesn't box out corners, Zach, from the catch point. Excess stutter steps in his breaks. Speed variation through routes doesn't exist. Didn't deal well with press coverage, which speaks to what TG is saying here. Solid in college at contested catches, but the NFL is a different animal and often relies on speed over his routes. So I think there's some there, Zach, the idea that Ruggs, that's something he's going to have to learn how to beat at the next level, getting off press, because if a defensive coordinator thinks he can take you away by simply pressing you at the line of scrimmage, you're going to have an answer for that.
But that's something you can teach in the NFL. That's something he can learn. You can't learn or teach speed. So as long as he has that as his main weapon, he will be able to add to that arsenal. The Broncos, for my money, have one of the best receiver coaches in the NFL in Zach Azzani. You put a Henry Ruggs, as raw as he might be, in this offense, I would consider him to take that next step fairly quickly. You can learn how to beat press coverage. And having Courtland Sutton opposite you, having Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay, Noah Fant working all in the same offense, he's going to get some one-on-ones, or he would get some one-on-ones anyway. So you can learn that skill set. You can't learn or teach speed, and that's most important for what the Broncos want in a wide receiver too.
All right, guys, we're starting to run out of time for tonight's show, so I'm going to go rapid fire through our remaining super chats, make sure we didn't miss anybody. Damian Clark Warren, speaking of our superstars, jumps in, $10 super chat. Thanks, Damian. He says, hey, guys, been busy with work. If Isaiah Simmons falls to 10, do we go and get him? You absolutely pick up the phone and check to see what the cost is. If it's something you can live with, then by all means, go get him.
I'll kick a second and a third round pick for him. I really would consider making that trade. I don't know if I would give up both of those high round capital picks, but I'm definitely picking up the phone and seeing what it would take. You add Simmons to this defense, Chad. It's just next level. It would be unrealistically amazing.
Agreed. King Hicks jumps in, $5 super chat. Appreciate you, my friend. Longtime Broncos fan from the Bay Area in Cali, 10 minutes away from Oakland. Man, in the heart of enemy territory. I just wanted to let you guys know I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Wow, awesome. Thanks a lot. King Hicks, you are the man. We really appreciate it. That means a lot to us. Nad Ludlow jumps in with a $3 super chat. Appreciate you, brother. So consistent. Every single podcast we do, you're chipping in, and it means it doesn't go unnoticed, and it means a lot to us, my friend. He says, Mock Draft Mania. Thanks for the great content, guys. Hey, one of the reasons we decided to go with the mock draft roundup for today is, it's tradition at milehighhuddle.com. Mondays are when we do publish a mock draft. It always is going to be on a Monday. Monday kind of is, you're starting off your week. We thought a lot of our listeners after the fact are going to be listening to this podcast on a Monday, even though we're recording it and broadcasting live on Sunday. So we thought, let's go ahead with the mock draft roundup. All right, let's see what else we got here. Running out of time. Sorry, I can't get to all your questions, guys, your regular questions. We'll circle back tomorrow night, though, we promise. Holden Adams with the $2 super chat. Appreciate you, Holden. Wide receiver at 15, trade a second and a fourth round to get Ruiz. So if you take a wide out at 15, wide receiver at 15, trade second and fourth rounder to get Ruiz, meaning trading back into the first round. Is that what he's asking? I guess. I mean, you basically just view Ruiz as your second round pick, right? If you traded your second and fourth to get back in, you do have 3 third rounders. So I could live with that if it got you your starting center for the next 5 years.
I would as well. And if they want to move back up into the first round, I would probably look for Cushenberry if he's there, but Ruiz would be a plug and play starter as well. And they need a center. So that is my preference back to back, is getting your center and getting your wide receiver in your first 2 picks.
Boise man clarifying for us. He's actually from Wyoming. Awesome, dude. That's still in the Rockies, still in the heart of the geographic aspect of Broncos country, but we all know that it's a state of being. That's what it is. All right, guys, let's see here. Bear with us 1 second. Let's grab Justin Rogers jumping in with the $5 super chat.
Thank you, Justin.
I agree with Zach. Get Ruggs. Everyone is overlooking how he clears room for other positions. Also, the guy has a knack for the end zone. 25% of his touches went for a touchdown. That's what I can't remember who it was now that was saying that he's basically a speed guy and that's all he is. That's a good example of the counter argument to Ruggs being only a speed guy. This dude was a touchdown machine.
I'm not saying he's infallible. He's not a perfect prospect, but just his speed, which he has in spades right now, which he doesn't have to learn, what he would bring from day one would open up the field for Cortland Sutton more, Noah Fant, the rest of the Broncos playmakers. So even as a decoy initially until he gets up to speed in the NFL, he would provide dividends on the Broncos offense.
You guys, thank you for joining us tonight and participating in this conversation, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, Twitch even, wherever you're watching this show. We appreciate you joining us. And those of you who participate in the conversation in the chat stream, it means the world to us, and it makes these podcasts so unique and so fun for everybody, including us. And a mile-high salute to our Super Chat superstars. We really appreciate you guys. We got to wrap it up for tonight, though. Make sure you're following the podcast on Twitter at HuddleUpPod. Simply the best way to stay plugged in with us in real time, and also at Mile High Huddle. And while you're at it, if you're on Twitter, make sure you're following my partner here, Zack Kelberman, at Kelberman NFL, and myself at Chad and Jensen. Stay tuned. We're going to be back in the saddle same time tomorrow night, Monday, 6:15 Mountain, 8:15 Eastern. Until then, Zach, my brother, have a great start to your week, and the same to everybody else.
You as well, Chad. Excited to start a new week of podcasting. And Brian, we didn't miss you. We see you. We appreciate your interaction with us. We don't mean to ignore any questions. We'll say it again. We try to get to everybody, but we do see your interaction, and we do appreciate it.
I didn't see any actual questions. I just saw, no offense, Brian, I just saw you saying, don't ignore me. And then I would try and look up to see what a question is, and I don't see a question. So,
and Scott, we do appreciate you. If we did miss not get your donation.
Let me make sure I didn't miss somebody. Oh, yeah, it's a super sticker. That's why I missed it. I had to look at a different spot.
Good looking out, Brian.
That, Scott and Brian, good looking out, my friend. See, that's what it's all about, man. The community is a living, breathing, real thing, looking out for each other, and we appreciate that, you guys. But we'll talk to you again tomorrow night, 6:15 Mountain, 8:15 Eastern. For Zach, I'm Chad. We'll talk to you guys then.
You've been listening to the Huddle Up Podcast. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.